This roller coaster requires courage. When riding it, and as a constructor, you need courage akin to jumping off a 10-meter high dive platform. It involves the construction of the world's most modern and extreme spinning coaster. 723 tons need to be welded, transported, and assembled on site. A logistical feat with many unknown variables. With radical track figures and a spinning train, the German world market leader in roller coaster engineering is pushing the absolute limit. A new roller coaster is being built here at the company Mack Rides in Waldkirch in the Black Forest. The spinning coaster still bears the simple name 10195, the production serial number. For project manager Johannes Josvik, the exciting phase is beginning. In building 10195, success depends on a special machine and on the experience of the worker operating this machine.
This is where the pipes for the tracks are bent. They're cold bent on a 3-roll bending machine. We have pipes here that are 140 millimeters in diameter with a 20 millimeter wall thickness. It varies depending on the load where the track will be installed later. And all the pipes we use for tracks basically go over this bending machine.
There will be 98 track sections in a so-called truss structure in the end. Most of them bend and wind. It's remarkable that the production of the individual track sections still requires a lot of manual labor. The world-famous manufacturer of roller coasters relies entirely on the intuition of its employee, Rolf Meinold, for the right track pipe thickness.
The pipe thickness always varies. Sometimes it's 17.5 millimeters, sometimes 17.6, sometimes 17.4. Naturally, that always results in a different bending pressure. It's never the same.
That means that you can never see from the outside how it really is.
Nah, only when you're bending it, but you get a feeling for it, you know.
The track specialist measures the angle of the pipe bend repeatedly. Bending, measuring, bending, measuring. In small steps, Rolf Meinold gives each track pipe the proper curvature.
The worker on the bending machine, Rolf, knows exactly where the pipe will ultimately be installed. From the track blueprint, he already knows the position of the pipe. The pipe is marked accordingly and passed on to the track manufacturing department. Now you can see it. He's marked it. He started with rail 80, left pipe, direction of travel in this direction.
The left pipe from track 80 is just one of the nearly 300 steel pipes that pipe bending specialist Rolf Meinold handles patiently and carefully.
I don't like to bend the pipe more than 6 millimeters, otherwise there will be kinks and dents and it won't turn out right. And towards the end, less and less to get it right.
From the roller coaster architect, he receives the track blueprint for all the pipes, kept ready in the yard, that still have to be bent. And then comes the next surprise. Stefan Alt designed the system with an advanced architecture software that has its origins in gaming. And he got the ideas for the extreme figures from high diving, which he pursues as a recreational sport alongside his work as a roller coaster builder.
This color overlay provides good visualization. There you can see it easily. In the red areas, we are pressed into the seat. This is not extreme yet. The red would turn to pink and then to black, signaling that's too much. Everywhere here, we are only in maximum red areas. Also, I always try not to keep the red areas too long, because then you're only pinned into the seat and at some point you can't take it anymore. Light blue means you feel weightless. Dark blue means that you're really lifted out of your seat. So if the bar wasn't there, you'd fall out of the roller coaster. So I can make the incline smaller here now. You can then see that the blue area has become somewhat shorter. If I make the hill higher, you can see that the area gets wider. And then at some point it gets so blue that I don't feel comfortable anymore and say, no, we're not doing that. My role is twofold. I'm a designer on the one hand and an engineer on the other. As an engineer, it's my job to make sure the roller coaster is safe and reliable. As a designer, to make sure it's exciting as possible.
In the end, the riding pleasure will also depend on how smooth. In other words, vibration-free the ride will be. As the saying goes, as smooth as riding on rails. Whether it will be a good roller coaster that the customer in Belgium and the riders will like later on is decided here and now in this factory hall. 20 workers are now assembling the entire track system as precisely as possible from individual bent pipes and metal struts. Ten of these computer-calibrated diagonals connect the bent pipes to form a track section. A total of 12,000 spot welds strengthen the installed steel into a system. When the train rolls over it, the entire track must be stable, but not rigid.
The load of the train, of course, bends the track. The whole structure works under load. Everything is in the elastic range and designed to simply return to its original structure and designed to last 20 to 50 years.
In the future, up to 7,200 people will ride the roller coaster on a normal 10-hour day. But where's the system actually assembled?
It's interesting to note that in the past, roller coasters were completely assembled here in the yard and over there, where our test facility is now. To make sure that the roller coaster really works and fits together on site. Today, as we've just seen, we no longer do that. Today, we just make the tracks piece by piece, and we're so accurate based on CAD capabilities that we can guarantee that the roller coaster will fit together on site, even without having completely assembled it.
The assembly of the new roller coaster will take place 675 kilometers from Waldkirch, on the Belgian Atlantic coast in the summer vacation town of De Panne. This is where all the individual parts are delivered by truck. Plopsaland will be home to the new extreme spinning coaster. The amusement park for small children, which opened in 2000, still lacks an attraction that appeals primarily to teenagers and young adults. With Mac's new roller coaster, the operator wants to ascend to the ranks of the top 5 European amusement parks. The difficulty is that the new roller coaster has to be integrated into the park landscape. The main track section will be located in an artificial lake. In order to be able to set the foundations for the columns, it was drained. A 23-member MAC team has already begun erecting the columns. The track columns will later stand on a total of 172 anchor points. They were previously calibrated by the construction management with laser scanners and poured with concrete. The construction is made even more complicated because it's located next to a whitewater slide.
Part of the roller coaster is in a lake, and on top of that we have to take into account another Mack coaster with an old Super Splash that's right next to it here. And you really need to make sure these things go well together and that it works, especially the foundations underwater. That's a bit difficult.
A tricky puzzle begins with a heavy-duty crane and 97 individual column sections. These were manufactured and supplied by an outside firm commissioned by Mack. Because the head of the amusement park wants to celebrate the opening of the roller coaster in the summer, The workers only have a short time window in late fall to build the columns. High-rise construction will occur at the most unfavorable time in terms of weather.
This is the highest support column we have. The rail height there is a maximum of 36 meters. That's where the support will be roughly 34.5 meters in the end.
To enable proper assembly of the individual sections, each section has a marking. But this is obviously missing here. The fitters can't find any and don't know which way around the next section should be mounted. Confusion surrounding column section K23.
But isn't there any marking on top?
There's no marking on top.
Well, then that belongs on the top.
But you said the marking always points up.
If there's no marking in the bottom at the column tower, then it belongs on the top. It's said that you always show the marking the right side up. That is, don't turn it upside down. And then sometimes that's questionable because you have to match up the markings. And if there's no marking at the top and there's a marking on the column, then you don't know how the column is to be mounted. But up to now, it's always fit. I mean, you could always read it. It wasn't upside down, so that's the bottom.
Now the column section needs to be lifted by crane. The goal is to complete the large column, the most important elevation of the entire track, today. Then the crane will be moved again. That costs time. However, the park operator wants to reopen the amusement park to the public as soon as possible in order to quickly earn back the €17.5 million investment. That's what the new roller coaster costs in total. But around noon, the wind and rain pick up. The construction team now has to assemble the columns under difficult conditions high up.
Now you can put it in. Have you got it?
Yeah, I got it.
Great.
First, they secure the position of the upper column hanging from the crane with a metal pin so that the column head cannot become unattached. Once the column section is secured, workers quickly bolt the two sections together with threaded screws. It's still possible to keep working, but as soon as the wind gets stronger, they may be forced to stop.
Temperature doesn't really matter. Of course, it's not exactly pleasant working in freezing temperatures. If your fingers are freezing, that's dangerous if something falls out of your hand, especially at the height with the heavy screws. In terms of wind at 9 meters per second and above, you have to stop using the crane.
At winds of 30 kilometers per hour, they stop.
And we also don't force anyone now and say, this still has to be assembled regardless of the weather.
If it doesn't work at all on a given day, well, then it has to be made up for, within the specified period of time.
Six weeks for construction of support columns and tracks. Then the roller coaster track should be finished. That's the challenge. Parallel to the track construction, the completion of the station building is also making progress. 2 trains will later start from here at staggered intervals, and the ride on the spinning coaster ends here after about 2.5 minutes. At the end of the line, there's already an evacuation platform for malfunctions. The station itself has 2 levels. This is where the passengers will later get on and off. When the train leaves the station full, it immediately goes into a kind of roll, the so-called yo-yo roll, an optical illusion.
It looks like the track is rising. That's the special feature, because the train virtually drops down on the left. Then it does a roll like that.
It really looks great. When you see the train coming out, as Dirk has already said, the track twists. It looks like it's actually rising, but it's only the bottom pipe rising there. In the actual roller coaster, we have a very slight slope that increases a bit, entering the first launch.
The train does not have its own drive, but more on how this is accelerated to 77 kilometers per hour after the first roll later on. A total of 2 years are budgeted for the entire project. The first half is now already gone.
When you've seen the blueprints, you know them inside and out. You've looked at everything umpteen times. And then seeing it implemented in real life, that feels great. It's really fantastic. Also to see the dimensions as it stands there in real life, that really is beautiful. That's worth a pat on the back.
Meanwhile, in a Mack factory hall in Herbolzheim. Here, the brand new cars of the roller coaster train celebrate getting married. This is what mechanics call it when the upper seat frame is connected to the rolling undercarriage. A train has 4 carriages with 4 seats each. The special feature, the top rotates. The viewing direction is therefore not always in the direction of travel. This in turn requires the highest standards in terms of safety and riding comfort. These are the restraint bars that keep passengers in their seats, as the ride on the spinning coaster goes upside down several times. 2 restraint bars are held in place by a bolt. It also enables the bars to be folded up and down when getting in and out. Maximilian Röser, head of marketing at the manufacturer, is happy that the train can soon be delivered to the customer.
We have the first assembly of our seats here now. In other words, the basic structure is already in place. On the other side, we have our undercarriages. And this is where all the safety-related areas are now installed. So the cylinders, the whole interlocking system, the sensor technology, it's all assembled. And then the seats are actually fitted out to where they can be married onto the undercarriage.
What you can see nicely here now is that we see our latest development stage of our seat frame here, which is no longer completely welded. Instead, the individual parts are all bolted together to avoid residual stress, as in welding, and also to reduce the time and effort required for testing later on. Because, in addition, welded seams can naturally have the potential to fail, which is why they need to be inspected regularly.
The nuts and bolts are painted with colored varnish, a seal that breaks when the screw loosens, for added safety. This is noticed immediately during maintenance. The undercarriage, the chassis, has many spinning parts to go through curves and spirals. This wheel bearing receives an extremely large amount of grease, which will only be evenly distributed after a series of test runs. But how is the train powered? It has no motor. Instead, there are 2 electromagnetic launchers on the track. They catapult the train to up to 77 kilometers per hour over the highest point. 2 of these magnetic launchers are enough for the entire track. Electric coils on the track are only one part of the whole system. The second part of the secret is contained in these boxes. In order for the electromagnetic coils to accelerate the train, each car needs permanent magnets like these.
So sehen die aus, wenn wir die bekommen.
This is what they look like when we receive them. Red and blue, the 2 poles. If you approach this with something metallic or magnetic, you can see that it's immediately attracted. Now I'm pulling this over it, and I can see this is starting to jump. Here at this point is the opposite pole. Here it's attracted. Here it's repelled. And there you can see very easily over the track that it's repeatedly repelled.
Dass das immer wieder, wenn ich es abhebe, immer wieder abgestoßen wird.
These permanent magnets are installed in the chassis and are no longer visible from the outside behind the cladding. Pushed by the invisible magnet force from the white stator housings on the track, the train climbs the first high vertical, 36 meters high. The launch area is located right after the first roll.
These here are the launch segments. Inside are the coils that propel the vehicle. Down here, the fans are for cooling the components.
sind die Kühlung von den Teilen.
That's where we transfer a lot of power.
Sehr viel Leistung.
And to do so, the parts also need to be cooled.
Müssen die Teile auch gekühlt werden.
And then the train is positioned here.
Positioniert. Steht dann auf den ersten
Then stands on the first launch segment and is then accelerated by the linear synchronous launch to, I think, to around 90 kilometers per hour, at which it then goes into the first high figure.
This will then be done with 1 megawatt of power. That corresponds to a total output of 1,000 automobiles, a massive 3,700 horsepower magnetic shooter. But the track has to be completed first. The track sections have arrived and will be attached to the columns by the installation team this winter. The first thing to be created is the spectacular vertical track on which the train will later shoot up in just 2 seconds. For the fitters, once again, this means after the column pre-assembly, climbing and fastening screw connections 36 meters up in the air. Nothing happens around here without safety equipment, and the components are assembled only by fitters working in buddy pairs. But the vertical is just the beginning in the designer's blueprint. It's followed by some really wild figures.
At the top, a small so-called outside banked curve, and then it drops vertically towards the lake into a so-called banana roll. Very disorienting, especially on this roller coaster.
Gerade bei der Anlage wahrscheinlich sehr desorientierend.
A vertical loop, very classic.
Vertikaler Looping, ganz klassisch.
Yes, the really hard part is that you have to be aware all the time that the cars are still spinning at the same time. So people are not necessarily looking straight ahead when they ride the roller coaster. They don't see what's coming.
But what is now up ahead for the installation team on roller coaster project number 10195 is the eagerly awaited track completion. Today, 12 days before Christmas, the actual festive moment has come for all the people on the construction site. The most important remaining track section is to be installed in the loop. This would make the track circuit more or less complete. Now, foreman Johannes Josvik can see how precisely the designers and fitters have worked.
Was wir jetzt sehen, ist eine Schiene ohne Stütze.
What we see now is a section of track without a column connection, installed between 2 tracks, which of course needs to fit precisely. So that's an exciting moment. If the columns on the left and right are 15 centimeters apart, or in the worst case 5 centimeters apart, then we won't install the track, because the track will fall through.
Bauen wir die Schiene nicht ein, dann fällt die durch.
Track section number 40 is to be screwed on tightly first on the right side, then on the left, according to the blueprint. At a height of 28 meters, the 2 Polish fitters struggled to dock the 3.4 metric ton curved single track.
Let me know if it fits.
Okay.
Man, keep it straight.
The fitters fight for the last centimeter, which the crane operator cannot see from below.
Damn, just a bit lower.
Only when the first bolts and screws are inserted through the holes is the track section secure and can't come flying out, and everyone involved is relieved.
The hardest part for the crane operator is keeping still, that they don't get a section jammed someplace up there when they're pulling it together. Of course, he also has to check to ensure that he doesn't put too much weight on the track. They don't want to pull down the crane.
The suspense is mounting. Done. The first screws are in place, and the fitter can tighten the nuts.
Go for it.
Damn.
Ah, the wrong way. We don't want everything to fall apart.
Inaczej tak. Wielu nie wyleciał do choinka.
Meanwhile, on the ground, two steel workers are moving pumps to the other side, which they can use to jack up the columns at the section that is still open.
Der Looping muss jetzt oben geschlossen werden.
If you look up, the loop still has to be closed at the top. And they're now starting to jack up the right side of the loop from the outside. And now they're going to start jacking up those three columns that are part of the column tower.
Stützenturm gehören für den Looping werden jetzt hochpumpen.
If they didn't jack up the columns, the gap between the last track section and the loop connection would be too large.
It's so that you can continue to bring the two columns together on the right and left so that the track can be joined at the top.
Above, the assembly team uses a chain hoist to assist in closing the loop circuit. Down below, the steel workers continue to pump the jacks synchronously.
It's important that they pump here at the same time. It wouldn't make sense if they only jacked up one side or the other. It's really important that they pump uniformly.
The fitter at the top can now insert the long bolts and tighten them with the heavy nuts. At the end, there is one last blow with the sledgehammer. Then there is one last screw connection.
Then we'll see. That's where the flags will be hanging. The national flags, the park's flag, our flag. You know, the team is somewhat proud of that. And justifiably proud. They've built it up and now they've achieved a milestone.
Setzen jetzt einen sogenannten Milestone.
The last screws have been tightened. The high-altitude assembly team is returning safely to the ground. After the loop closure, it's official. The most modern and spectacular spinning coaster in Europe is complete and standing in Belgium. In the USA, the Mack company has also built a similar coaster, but 10195 is built differently and thus unique. Despite its hulk and total mass of 723 metric tons, the same applies to this roller coaster as to all others. The megastructure must be allowed to move, to expand and contract. The steel engineers in Dirk Arendt's team have taken precautions similar to those used in railroad or bridge construction in managing a classic law of physics.
This is what's called the equalizing piece. It's the only straight part of the roller coaster. And the thing is, steel expands in the summer. When it gets warmer, it expands. When it gets cooler, it contracts. And this is the equalizing piece. According to calculations, it can move back and forth by up to 2 inches in the summer and winter. With the rest of the track, it's like this. You have the individual bends, and there the bend only expands to the outside or contracts inward. That's why you only need this equalizing piece on the straight section.
A short equalizing piece for a roller coaster ride that allows for vertical accelerations up to 4 Gs and spans an area 175 by 135 meters on the park grounds. But nothing works here yet without the trains to go along with it. March 2021, in Herbolzheim. The cars have meanwhile been fully assembled and are being packed today for transport to Belgium like a big present. Two trucks are to transport the first train with its 4 cars and spare parts so that the first running tests can be performed out on the track in Belgium. The second train will follow 2 weeks later. Maximilian Röser would prefer to keep the cars for himself. He's especially fond of this roller coaster.
Yeah, it's really great. especially when you think about it. This is like a gift on its way to the customer. And the customer is naturally ecstatic when the truck arrives there. He'll open the tarp, and exactly this vehicle will appear. That's the kind of gift I'd like to get for my birthday every once in a while.
A precious gift. Each individual car is very expensive.
So the train, as it's standing here, is the most expensive product available on the world market at the moment, in the area of roller coasters. So much detail goes into it, so much technology and expertise, it would surely cost more than a luxury car. Standing in front of us is a vehicle that's worth more than a Maybach, and that's the truth.
The entire train has a value of about 1.5 million euros. That's why Maximilian Rösser monitors the loading process very closely when the forklift creaks under the tonnage of the first car.
When you hear that, you realize how much power the forklift actually needs, how heavy this vehicle is. It looks so light when it's gliding over the track at 80 kilometers per hour. But just think about the sheer mass of material in motion. It's amazing.
The minutes on the forklift cause physical agony for the roller coaster specialist. This is because although each car can withstand extreme forces on the track, the vehicle is very fragile off the track.
We'll be happy when it's on the track, because that's where it belongs. It doesn't belong on the truck. When it's located securely on the rail, then we'll be relieved.
The loading begins. First, the forklift heaves the first 3 cars into the first truck. Slowly. But with direct contact to the truck loading wall, so that there is no play in a forward direction and thus no slippage of the cargo. Cars 2 and 3 are also loaded. It's easier than they thought.
But always with heart pounding.
Loading takes just under an hour. Then the truck is ready to take off. 675 kilometers to Dieppe on the Belgian Atlantic coast. Now that the cars have been safely loaded, what else could go wrong?
On the road, there's not much that can happen. We load it onto the truck, then it will travel to the customer in Belgium. There, things will get a bit difficult again. That's where we'll have to hoist the roller coaster cars and set them down onto the track. Then everything must be properly configured. This is high precision work. And afterwards, the test drives can actually begin, but nothing really should go wrong in between.
In Belgium, however, a severe storm awaits the truck drivers upon arrival. So severe, in fact, that drivers keep moving their trucks as windshields to prevent the wind from grabbing the cargo like a sail and blowing it off the forklift. For the second truck driver, this becomes a battle with the elements. Nevertheless, Franz Friedel, who is now in charge of testing the coaster in Belgium, has the precious cargo unloaded, but in a way that ensures it won't fall very far off the forklift.
The only remaining concern is on the premises. Here we still have paved road. On site, we have only an unsurfaced road. If a pothole comes along, it could quickly start to tip. That's why we have to keep it close to the ground, so it basically can't fall very far.
Already when entering the construction site, however, the wooden substructure is dragging across the ground. It's actually only 46 meters to the staging area, but it's a rocky ride. Upon arrival at the train station, the cars are to be lifted into the building by crane. But because the wind is not letting up, Franz Friedl postpones the operation until the afternoon. And although the situation is not much better, the foreman wants to risk it with a few safety precautions. To protect against scratches, he attaches cardboard to the side panels.
When maneuvering, the vehicle may sway to the left or to the right. We don't want to damage the cladding. We're securing the load with ropes to allow some control of the vehicle from below. The wind has died down a bit. I hope we catch an opportune moment and eventually bring it in. We'll lift it up a bit first and see how it responds. How much force it takes to keep the vehicle still, in position. If it immediately starts drifting away from us, we'll have to abort the attempt. Then we'll just have to try it again.
They start out. The first vehicle is on the hook. Franz Friedl directs 2 men below and 1 helper above while the crane carefully hoists the load. Sometimes the package begins to inflate like a sail. Then the men let the cargo hang in position for a brief moment. Now it's a matter of making sure that the support wheels touch down exactly on the track platform on the sides, without getting any fingers in the way. Then the hardest part is done. Crawling with 1 hand on the crane controller, the foreman and his helper pull the first car onto the secure station. It still squeaks in some places, but the vehicle is now out of danger.
Now we've done it. Everything went well. The vehicle has been raised without any damage. So it went better than I thought it would.
Franz Friedl and his team also transport the other 3 cars to the 2nd floor of the station. An entire train is now ready in the maintenance area for the first test runs. The Belgian amusement park, Plopsaland, with its 50 attractions and so far 1.2 million visitors per year, is one of the medium-sized amusement parks in Europe. With the new extreme spinning coaster, however, the park owner wants to move up into the Champions League. But before the new ride officially opens on July 21st, the roller coaster still has to complete a few tests, initially without passengers. And before the first passengers are allowed to ride, the coaster still has to undergo a technical inspection by the TÜV. In a little less than 2 years, the shell construction has been transformed into a colorful train station, with a lake and park landscape out front. But the last hurdle still has to be overcome. Today is the TÜV appointment.
We expect no major defects to be identified, at least we hope not.
Franz Friedl is only responsible for the train and track. The buildings and landscaping installations remain the responsibility of the park operator. But of course, many things are interrelated, which is why the 2 Dutch TÜV inspectors Koen Meselier and Rick Verkhuizen are taking a look at the entire facility.
We take a look at the technical installation itself, like here the brakes and all the pneumatics, everything around it. But also we take a look at the environment, so trees.
At this point, the inspectors discover a large branch protruding too far into the braking zone. the branch must be removed prior to opening.
Es ist ja hier eine Evakuierungsplattform, wenn
It is, after all, an evacuation platform here. When the train stops in the braking zone, then the guests must be evacuated here. The tree is still growing. There could still be branches hanging lower or even falling down later if it's very windy. That's why we want to trim them a bit more to make sure there's a safe passage here.
In the next step, the TÜV inspectors check the safety zones around the tracks. Are the fences secure? And who has access?
We have a panel there. Of course, is a lock, is a door lock.
This is a special lock?
Yes, I guess it's a special key.
It's a special key?
I don't know. They just supplied to me yesterday.
Yeah. So we're going to have to take a look if it's only accessible by technical staff.
Yeah.
At one point, the TÜV questions the insufficient clearance between the protective fence and the track. This is where the park needs to make improvements prior to opening.
At this point, you're too close to the rail. If you can take a look backwards, that post is actually very close to the rail.
When you're outside, you can reach very easy the part which the train is passing, the wheel bogie. This cut your fingers off or your hands.
Or if you have people with umbrellas during the day want to do. We don't say everybody's like that, but we've seen a lot of stupid. So this is the easy part. So you see, if you take a look at the wheel bogie,
to make sure there's a safe passage here.
Das sollte vermieden werden.
Yes. The solution is they're going to add netting on top of this again with an incline to prevent people from climbing over and to prevent people from reaching into the envelope, the safety envelope on the right of the train.
What interests the inspectors the most are access points for maintenance personnel and emergency exits. Surprisingly, the inspectors only take a brief look at the track itself. It's important to note, prior inspections took place involving site documentation, welding certificates, and worker certificates. However, the TÜV accepts paperwork for the track check.
So the train is the most critical part of the whole ride. So that's why we pay special attention on the train.
Normally, the TÜV wants to keep people away from machines, but this involves people sitting in a machine and being safe. First, the TÜV inspectors check the chassis and the fastenings of all the components. Then they have foreman Franz Friedel show them the safety equipment on the seats.
Hey Franz, explain the restraint system, the locking and the monitoring.
Right now we have no electric, so if I would now open the lap bars by manually, you see now the lock is engaging.
This is how the restraint bar technology works.
Wenn man auf Knopf drückt, werden die
When you press the button, the restraint bars are closed. Not with pressure, of course. The restraint bars close through their own weight, but are then locked by two redundant cylinders. If the redundant hydraulics fail, there's still a mechanical interlock here that would then act. So the restraint bar would not open in any case.
The TÜV inspectors remain on site for 3 hours. It's the first of 2 visits. So there's a subsequent inspection as an opportunity to remedy any defects. In the station, the inspectors discover something else. At the base of a support column, the concrete foundation has developed a crack.
The column here is not critical for structural stability. Naturally, we do have places that are under a heavy load. Something like that would not be good, because in principle, the concrete should absorb the load from the anchor. If it breaks up, we have all the entire load impact on the anchors.
dann haben wir die ganze Lasteinwirkung
Of
auf
course,
den Ankern und
the anchors are not built for a high
die
load,
hohe Belastung gebaut.
so that would become an ongoing
Dauerhaft
problem.
wird das ein Problem werden dann.
No, it's not good, but I don't think this will be one of these items that would prevent opening the ride.
When we make remarks, we have different priorities depending on the type of remark. Some of the remarks need to be done before opening for public, others can be done within a month or 2 months later after the commissioning.
The two TÜV inspectors have seen everything. They cannot give a TÜV seal of approval yet.
8 to 9%.
We have some items that needs to be solved before opening. So, but in general,
More infrastructure and
Yeah.
surrounding.
yeah. But well, it was good.
Franz Friedl will receive the inspection report in the next few days with a list of defects.
Ich bin soweit zufrieden. Ich erwarte nicht
I'm
große
satisfied. I don't expect any major points that affect us.
Punkte.
From a mechanical and steel construction point of view, everything is in order.
Soweit in Ordnung.
It means the customer will still be subject to a few more restrictions or take care of a few more things.
Machen müssen. Es sind bei den
The railings have not yet been installed on the stairways.
sind halt einfach noch nicht
That is,
installiert.
these are still expected to be completed before the next
Dinge
approval.
werden halt jetzt noch erwartet, dass das fertiggestellt ist bei der nächsten Abnahme.
To remove the suspense, the roller coaster receives the TÜV certificate and is allowed to open its gates to the public after a little less than 2 years of construction. From now on, 720 people per hour will be able to experience the ride. A 160-second ride through the yo-yo roll, cliffhanger, loop, and banana roll. The day of the opening. Shortly before the first passengers flock to the new roller coaster, project managers and designers treat themselves to their first personal ride. Project 10195 now has a more resonant name: Ride to Happiness. The park operator entered into a partnership with techno music promoter Tomorrowland. The Ride to Happiness, exciting for the builders.
So. Okay. Jetzt geht's dann los, wenn's wahr ist.
How will they react? How aware are they of the ride at all?
Und los geht's.
The magnet launch. Acceleration to 77 kilometers per hour. The cliffhanger, 90 degrees vertical. Into the banana roll, and then into the loop. An intermediate acceleration in launch 2. And then it's already back towards the station through a double dive loop. Although the two designers know the coaster inside and out from the blueprint, they're deeply awestruck, just like normal passengers.
Irre. Echt gut. Echt sauber gemacht.
Teil.
Stefan hat's echt gut gemacht.
So how was it?
It was marvelous, lots of fun.
Absolutely insane, but soft as butter. There's no corner in it. It was insane. You guys made an awesome track here. Great work, it was really good.
krasse Arbeit. Ja, kann man so sagen.
Everything is ready. The Belgian amusement park, Plopsaland, opens the spectacular roller coaster, stretching almost 1 kilometer in length. The project managers and designers can't get enough of their own roller coaster. As the cars can rotate freely, each subsequent ride is always new, depending on where people sit. Those who want to go on the ride have to pay a bit more than 40 euros for the day ticket and be at least 1 meter 30 tall, which makes sense because the spinning coaster is physically exerting with its extreme verticals and 5 somersaults, up to 4 Gs. And the quest for the world's most spectacular roller coaster continues. Now that Project 10195 has been completed, the Mac people are already working on the next number.